So here we are now outside. I just want to quickly demonstrate 3 uses of the 6 Macros product. I just completed creating this assortment of vegetables and colors. If you come in a little closer, you can see what I've done, but I've just literally minutes ago planted it. I haven't even watered or fertilized or have done anything with that. We're gonna do that together, but I've got here a bed of bush tomato and a pepper and some flowers known as vinca, and then my zucchini squash on my left here. So again, this is only for demonstration purposes. Only you would never plant these plants this close to one another. One of these would be sufficient for this pot, and even a larger pot would be even better. The plants would appreciate that. But again, for demonstration purposes, I want to show the versatility of a couple of these products here on the table. And then this here to my left is a succulent arrangement, something I was gifted a few years ago, and we're going to do something with that shortly. The first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to open the product like so. You can see that it's got a Ziploc seal and then a tear notch right here in the upper corners. So we're simply going to open it and get to it here. What we're going to do is simply take, I've got here a measuring tablespoon. I'm simply going to take about a tablespoon of the product. You can see in here the contents, and we're going to simply scatter it around the surface of the soil. And the next step we can do with our fingers, but I'm just going to show you. This is, a hand tool you probably have around your garden. You simply want to scratch it into the top 1/4 inch of the soil, no deeper. The goal is you want the soil to come into contact with the fertilizer, and any life that's within the soil will come up to the fertilizer, and the fertilizer is going to pretty much come to life also with being in contact with the soil. What we're going to do next is simply water the plant. As we water it, the fertilizers are breaking down and working their way down into the root zone. This fertilizer will continuously break down, feeding the plants for at least the next 60 to 90 days. Another good practice is to mulch around the plants as well. So now what we're going to do is simply add a layer of about a 1/2 inch, maybe an inch, maybe 2 inches of mulch, which is basically wood chips around each of the plants. And the benefit of doing this is it's going to, there's a variety of benefits. One of them is it's basically going to keep those other soil areas weed free. Secondly, it's going to help the plant better retain moisture. Thirdly, it's going to also help control the soil temperature. Again, in an organic garden, the goal is to also have a lot of organic life within the soil. By maintaining soil temperature at a more even temperature throughout the entire day between the afternoon heat and the middle of the nighttime lows, the better the soil biology will thrive and perform. So again, the goal with creating a layer of mulch is to basically further support the soil biology that's within the soil. So let me just finish this up next. So here we are now. We just mulched around the entire plant. Look at how much better it even looks, and the plants are gaining and benefiting so much more by this. So come in a little closer and take a look at this arrangement. Now that we've fed it, we've mulched it, and now what we're going to do next is I'm going to teach you a lesson on how the 6 Macros products can also be used as a foliar feed. So what I have over here to my right here is a watering can. This one here is 2 gallons. The instructions on here to say to use about 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. So this container being 2 gallons, and if you take a look, you can see, they've simply got clean water in here. There's nothing added yet. What we're going to do is simply take, for this 2 gallon container, 2 tablespoons of product. This here being 1, and I'm actually going to put a little less than 2, just because I'm not actually all the way up. And now we're simply going to stir that in. It's recommended as well to wait up to an hour before using it. So if you need about 5 gallons of liquid feed, you would take simply your 5-gallon container, add 5 tablespoons. Let it sit for a water just to allow the organic product to break down as much as possible, so it's being fed as much as possible as you're doing the watering. Let me just stir this a little further. We don't have an hour to wait right now, so I'm just going to show you how this product's going to work. If you want to take a look in here, you can see, and I'm using right now the Super Blend Ivory Organics. So that's starting to break down, but again, it's only been a minute since we started, and you can now water the entire plants, as the plants can benefit also absorbing a lot of those macro and micronutrients through the leaves, and obviously whatever is surplus is going into the soil and improving the soil and all of the soil macro and micro elements, as well as offering a lot of beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungus, and there's so many other benefits which we'll continue getting through in future videos. And then I've got over here my succulent arrangement. Instead of disrupting the soil as we did with the granular, we can simply water it like so as a foliar. I'm just going to walk throughout the rest of the garden and continue watering my plants. So here we are next to our Pinkerton avocado tree, installed just a little over a year ago, maybe 14, 15 months ago. Check out all the fruit on here. So you can see there's some fruit over here, fruit, some more fruit, some more behind this leaf. When it comes to caring for your trees, it's ideal to be adding smaller amounts over and just more regularly throughout the year. Especially spring, summer, and fall. Summer again being the peak time of the year for feeding your plants. So here we are now. We're simply going to take our 6 macros. I'm using again the Super Blend, and I'm simply going to take my tablespoon and just scatter it around the soil. You can watch this. I've already been mulching around the plant. When it comes to mulch, and we've had many lessons on this, make sure the wood chips are not in contact with the tree. You can see that there's maybe just a few pieces of wood chips, but it really builds up as you get away from the tree. So what we're going to do is simply take our fertilizer and we're going to scatter it around the root zone of the plant. The goal is we want to make sure that it's got as many nutrients in the soil to continue supporting the growth and the fruit of the plant. And now what we're going to do is take our hand tool here, and again, the goal is to not disrupt any of the roots, but simply get the soil in contact with the fertilizer, like so. So we're pretty much disrupting some of the wood chips that are surrounding the plant, and then we'll reposition the wood chips to continue insulating the soil, keeping it cooler during the day and warmer at night. It also offers that same protection insulation during the winter as well, keeping the soil warmer by having a nice blanket of wood chips guarding and protecting that root zone. And now we'll simply water, and that'll begin to activate that fertilizer in the soil. We're going to make sure we give it a good watering. I'm going to continue watering it later. The other thing I'm going to do with my prepared liquid feed is get up as high as I can above the avocado and just water those leaves. And those leaves will absorb a lot of those elements that are within the product. Let's get on to the final step. So another benefit of the 6 Macros fertilizers is as a supplement to your compost tea. We can actually create something with a lot more microbial life and further benefit to your plants by preparing a compost tea to feed your plants. And so what we're going to do here is I've got a 5-gallon container of water. If you want to take a look here, there's nothing in here yet. Ideally, if you're using your tap water, you're going to want to make sure that you leave it out for at least 2 to 3 days before starting this process, as there may be too much chlorine and other chemicals that'll interfere with the biology and the life that's within the water. So, and the ideal water to be using is your water from your rain gutters, from your pond, just more of a natural source of water would be preferred over using your public water. So, with that being said, what we're gonna do is take the 6 Macros fertilizer, taking my tablespoon here, and it says you can add to a 5-gallon container 5 tablespoons of the product. So we're gonna go 1, 2, and you can see how readily it begins to dissolve. The clumps that you see are mostly air bubbles, but once we start adding the bubbles, you'll start seeing it mix. It's number 3, 4, and 5. And now what we'll do is add our bubbler, which this here is a pump that I picked up at Petco for about $15 to $20, and we're going to oxygenate the water. The idea is that we want the beneficial oxygen-loving organisms within it to thrive, and we want to make sure that the biology that's near the bottom doesn't rot. So that's the reason we're adding oxygen to this mix. Where we're going to add next, and I've got here, is some basically sugar or carbohydrates to feed the biology within this product. So what we're going to do is simply take, and you can see the product I'm using here is agave in the raw, just an organic sweetener, and we're using about a tablespoon or 2 to add the sugars or the carbs necessary to continuously feed, and the goal is to pretty much get a population that's exploding exponentially per day. So the goal is now to wait about 2 to 3 days from now before we use the compost tea. Let me get my stir and begin to start mixing this through. And now we're simply going to just mix this down. And take a look at what the solution looks like so far. Once you're done with your product, you can see how easy it is to seal it and store it. And now just store it in your garage or another cool, dark place. And one other tip I want to share with you, if you happen to have a compost pile within your garden, as I do, you can actually add a handful of compost to that, or just get a scoop of your best soil within your garden, and that'll just further add more life and more biology to it. Again, the goal being more beneficial bacteria, more beneficial fungus to the mixture, and I'm going to do that right now, so follow me. So here we are with our compost bin, just a small one that we have here hidden behind some of these starting fig trees, and you can see it looks like a pumpkin in here has begun to germinate. It's good, and take a look at all the life here. I'm just taking a scoop. I'm hoping you can see the worms and all the life that's in there. If you can get the worms out, there's no need to drown these worms. You can get the worms out. The goal is to pretty much get the beneficial bacteria and fungus, and try to get a little deeper. Take a look at all that life. It's just out of control. We're going to be using this mixture in the upcoming week or two, and you'll see that in the future YouTube release here on the Ivory Organics channel. You're going to see how we're going to end up using this throughout the entire garden. But in the meantime, I've just got a handful. You can take a few more handfuls, it wouldn't hurt. And let's get back into dumping that into our mixture. And here we go. We're just going to add now that compost. We pretty much pulled out the worms. I've learned that from a prior lesson from some of you guys saying, you know, try to save those worms from drowning, but they usually don't drown with this much oxygen. They can typically breathe through their skin. But there we go. Our compost tea is now in the making, and now let's get back to So here we are where we started with this arrangement that we've thoroughly watered. We've then fed with our granular fertilizer at the soil level. We even did a liquid feed through the leaves. Something I'm going to do, just being that it was just recently planted, and you've seen me do this for years, is we're going to now add a foliar sprayer. We're going to add the Ivory Organics ready-to-use spray. The idea is that we're going to offer protection from sunburn, insects, and rodents. Being that we're now just a week away from summer, and now the days are approaching about 14 hours of daylight and 14 hot hours of daylight, the goal is we're going to want to keep these plants as cool as possible so that they don't burn. The leaves don't burn, the trunks don't burn, and this here is just a light coat. There's the other Ivory Organic products that you can brush on, but again, being this isn't an ideal situation for going with a paintbrush and painting stems. The more practical way is to simply spray. So we're gonna do that real quick. And I'll come in a little closer and you can see what I've done. You may notice that there's now an organic sunblock protection on the plant. And again, we've done this to our pepper and tomatoes and our squash here, as well as our flowering vinca. The application of the product, as some of you may know, is use on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. Basically, anything you plant or transplant, or if you're doing summer pruning and you've opened the canopy, you're gonna find value in using the Ivory Organics whitewash formulas. And now, back to the studio.